Hey everybody, it's Colin here. I'm the creative director for the Best in Tabletop Network, and I am a little sad because all of you don't know how excited you should be. You'll be excited here in a moment, and that's great, but right now I am ahead of you in the excitement, and it's unfair. So let me talk to you guys about why we're here. When we started Biff Pod, the original podcast that started the network, like 7 years ago now. Ridiculous. When we started that, we were very focused on how you win. And it was always like, we kind of wanted to talk about hobby, but we really couldn't get to it. But we did start talking about sportsmanship. And while this was happening, my wife was painting, and she was doing a really great job with very minimal, mediocre assistance from me. She was doing a really good job, and I was winning Best Overall awards. And it felt better to me than winning Best General by a lot, because it was a teamwork thing I had done with my wife. Now, I'm trying to become a better painter, and it's really hard for me. And maybe I'll have a future show I can talk about that on. But it really, to me, the hobby is so well encapsulated by the idea of a Best Overall award. Sportsmanship is incredibly important. And hobby is incredibly important, because if everybody just brought cardboard cutouts of their models that were like black and white, the game would suck and you wouldn't play it. Like, it matters that these armies are beautiful. It matters that they're interesting. It matters that I can walk around a tournament, that my wife, who doesn't play the game, can walk around a tournament and be like, did you see Noah's Knight? Did you see the thing that he did? Or did you see Joe's display board? So the whole time we've been doing this network, we've been talking about how we're the good network. We're the good person network, right? It's about being kind and being supportive, and it's not about laughing at others and making fun of other people. And that's really a lot of the sportsmanship. And we spend a ton of time talking about how to win. It's really time to talk about all of them together. So when I first thought about this, it was Joe brought it to me. Joe came to me and said, hey, we don't know anybody in each other particularly well. I'm a aggressive hobbyist. That's not the word you use, Joe. No. Aggressive hobbyist is not a great word, but he's an enthusiastic hobbyist, and he's talking about the different armies he has and the stuff he's painted and what's he doing. And he has this idea for this show. And I'm thinking, okay, I don't know this Joe guy very well. He seems great. I'm interested to see if this could work. Who would I put with Joe that would make this show really, really fun? Joe seems like he's going to be great. What would be a good counter Joe? Well, I had to ask Noah, and Noah was the first person and the only person on my list. And the reason for that is that Noah has been on our shows recently, and he's done a really great job. He's got a flair for this. And also because Noah and I met under the circumstance of meeting at tournaments and Colin defeating Noah several times in a row. And then Noah coming to my house to practice and Colin defeating Noah a bunch more times. And Noah was not frustrated about that. He's all about the learning. But Noah at one point says, I can't be the best general in the Pacific Northwest. I don't have the time for that. It's not going to happen. But I can win every Best Overall award if I commit to it. And since then, he's won a stupid amount of Best Overall awards. So I thought Noah and Joe have to meet. So I said, Noah and Joe, you guys talk to each other. I'm going to back up. We'll see what you guys think. And shockingly, despite sharing the same hairstylist, that's a joke for people on the YouTube. Despite sharing the same hairstylist, they really did get along. And I'm very, very excited to add the Best Overall show to the network. These gentlemen are going to come at you every other week. We're thinking Thursday nights. They'll let you know if that's what they want to do. It's up to them. I do want to say that we know that this show is going to have pictures and video. I presume all clean, gentlemen, but we're going to have pictures and video. And I know that isn't great for the podcast audience. I'll tell you guys, this is on YouTube. It's there immediately. As soon as they do it, it's there. It's got the same audio as you were going to get on the podcast. I'm sorry that it's not on the podcast, but I mean, it is on the podcast, but if you want to see the images and things, you need to go find it on YouTube. So with that, I am going to just enthusiastically welcome you guys to the first episode of the Best Overall Show. Thank Noah and Joa. That's what I was going to do there. Thank Noah and Joa for letting me come on and introduce you guys. I'm really honored, and I hope you have a wonderful first show and have just a great time. Audience, make sure to talk with them. Give them hell. We'll talk to you guys all soon. Bye now.
Thanks, Colin.
Thanks, Colin.
Well, hey, again, I'll say it. I know Colin said it already way better than I'll ever say it, but welcome to our first episode. We're super stoked that you're here. And I'm Noah Badone. So this, if you're on the podcast, this sultry tone is a bald-headed, dark-bearded, very nerdy individual. And I'm joined by Joe. Joe, say hi, Joe.
Hey, how's it going?
Oh, man, you didn't say hi, Joe.
Yeah.
The dad
hey, Joe, how's
missed.
it going?
All right. So best overall, something that's really important to me and to Joe, we've talked about this a lot, is that going back, into my earlier days in the hobby, the thing that got me into 40K in general was not the competitive play. It was the models and the lore and all that stuff. And I think that's true for a lot of us. I know, Joe, you said like the modeling was a big part for you, right?
Absolutely. Yeah, that's what I played for back in like 3rd and 4th edition. And then once I kind of moved up to where I live now, I didn't have a whole lot going on. So I was like, I'm just going to start painting some models. And that's where, that's how I got back into it.
And that's something to do. That's how I got into it too. After the Marine Corps, I needed something to do in my spare time. And the fact that this hobby also has a competitive element was amazing. And also, I love the community. I love community in general, but the community around Warhammer has been amazing. And for me, it's the confluence of the community, the creativity and art that you get to do along with it. And I like puzzles. I like challenges. So the competitive play is a really big part of that for me. Back in the day, in like 5th edition, best overall was the only award that mattered. That was like most of the events, best overall was the thing. Since we've focused more on competitive play as the hobby has kind of grown, as we go into 8th and 9th edition, best general is kind of like taken the big seat, and that's fine. I mean, it's one of the things that pushes the game into more recognition, like esports kind of style, which is great. But if you come for the competitive play, I hope you stay for the other elements, right, that make 40K amazing, which for me is the hobby and the people, right? And the best overall has had a lot of different names, right? So I think right now FLG is calling it Paragon. We've heard it called Renaissance, Renaissance Man. But in general, what we're talking about is the person who performs the highest level of, across a composite of the art and creativity of their models and their army, the level of their competitive play, and how positive an influence they are on their community, that being, in the microcosm of games, a pleasant opponent, right? There's not really a better way to judge it outside of that over like, just in the scope of a tournament, but it's got to be someone who, as I call, is like pro and not being a jerk, right? They're very someone who makes it enjoyable, even when maybe you're getting your butt kicked, even when maybe there's some tension. That person who is really invested in both of you having a good time and being a good opponent. I think that's one of those core principles. You want to add anything to that, Joe?
No, I think you covered it pretty good. The sportsmanship is obviously such a huge part of being best overall. So, just having a positive attitude and knowing that when you're playing someone, you're basically entering into a contract with them, more or less, of trying to have a good time, because it is a game, and you're here to try to have a good time yourself and have your opponent have a good time as well.
Absolutely. Right. I think I'm glad you brought that up about like the contract, because we spend, 30, 40, 50 hours painting models, getting ready for events. We spend, 3 hours at a time playing games to practice. Then we go and take, either a whole Saturday or a whole weekend or even more to play a bunch of games with a bunch of strangers. And if you spend all that time and then you spend all those games playing against people who are very unpleasant to spend time with, that's a pretty bad feel bad and doesn't really result in you wanting to come back for more, right? So it's kind of all of our duties to the hobby to at least make the experience at the table tenable. We don't have to be the most, funnest person to play against of all time, but at least something that someone can go through and not walk away feeling like, man, that was really terrible. I do not want to come to an event again because I might have to spend time with that person again. So I think what we wanted to do is talk a little bit about how each of us individually approaches best overall and kind of why that's our focus and what we do about best overall. And then we'll talk about a little more. So a little context and background. Not every event does a best overall. FLG does. They do it currently in the form of their Paragon. Most of the Northwest circuit does. I know there are places that don't, but I think the areas that you're going to see it the most is where there is a really healthy competitive community, because I think that also makes it really conducive to the hobby, right? I feel like there is this weird thing where if the competitive people in the area are cool to hang out with and are friendly and welcoming, you end up with kind of a greater saturation of higher quality hobby in that area as well. I don't know why that is, but I feel like that's true. I've been in some areas that are pretty well known for having unpleasant people to play against. And I noticed kind of a lower level hobby. And I spent a lot of time in the Northwest, California, and in New York, and even over in the UK, and in the areas that are well known for those great competitive sports. The hobby also seems to be kind of on point. And I'm not saying they're the same people, but it feels like a welcoming competitive community does make it easier for the hobbyists to participate. All right, Joe, so what's best overall mean to you? How do you approach it? What do you get out of
it? Best overall is to me the complete amalgamation of everything in Warhammer, because so much of it, which you did touch on already, we do at home at the paint desk. So hours and hours and hours. I'm probably putting in 3 to 4 times just on one squad that I would spend playing a whole game. So I mean, having those two come together is hey, that's what it's all about, is having good hobby and doing the best you can in the competitive tournament and being a good sport the whole time as well.
For you, is it more about the expression, or is it for you more about the setting an achievement goal and the recognition of the achievement?
Yeah, definitely the achievement. I like to set personal goals for myself. I don't get to play terribly often because of the remoteness of where I live.
Sure.
So that's why I spend and have spent so much time hobbying over the last probably since about 2011. Hour, 2 hours a day, almost all the time. Some days more or less than others, but just grinding a lot of painting hours. And then as time went on, I've kind of completed more and more armies. And I'm like, I want to start trying to go to some tournaments to show these things off. And went to a couple majors and got absolutely destroyed.
Cool. Absolutely. That's how we learn.
Yep. And then as time went on, I was like, man, I really need to start doing better on, the first big one I went to, they gave us a rubric afterwards, and it showed where everyone's battle points and paint scores put you in the best overall. And despite going 0-5, I still got second place overall because my paint score was so high.
Oh, okay.
Yeah. And I was like, man, if I could have just done a little better, I would have knocked it out of the park. So that was kind of the impetus to start trying to get better at playing the game as well.
What part of the 3 pillars do you find the hardest, right? Is it the social aspect at the table? Is it the hobby, or is it the competitive play?
Yeah, definitely the more social aspect for me. Because when I'm playing, I'm just so hyper focused on trying to do the best that I can.
Sure.
And
so you're on the not in a negative way, but you're on like the perfectionist spectrum of the best overall approach, right?
Yeah.
You want to be incredibly precise in your competitive play. You want to be incredibly precise and perfect in your paint. And because of your focus on precision and perfection, it makes it maybe a little harder for that social aspect, because if things aren't going perfect, do you feel like that affects kind of your demeanor and some of your interaction at the table?
Yeah, absolutely. And I'm not going to be, a jerk to my opponent or anything.
Oh, of course not.
Yeah, I'm definitely going to be a little more introverted than if I can tell that something is definitely not going my way. And I'm going to be trying to, critical think my way out of the mess that I'm in. So
I've talked before with people about there's external salty and internal salty, right? It sounds like you get a little internal salty and start trying to beautiful mind math equation your way out of the hole you're in. And do you feel like that does have some impact on your kind of opponent's perception of the connection or the temperature of your social interaction at the table?
Yeah, absolutely. One of the tournaments I went to like 2 years ago, I was doing real good. I just finished painting up a sister's army.
Sure.
And this was my first tournament I took them to, and I won my first 2 games. And then I played into this White Scars guy who just steamrolled me. I mean, I was pretty much tabled by turn 2. And actually, he's a very good friend of mine now. So
okay, cool.
But
friendship's born in blood. Sounds good.
Yep, absolutely. So that would be a case of my opponent being an excellent, awesome sport. So,
and so in that case, do you feel like your opponent sensed your kind of introversion as things were going well, and did he do anything to improve your overall engagement? Because I know I've done that, right? Did he reach out or try to commiserate, or just try to smooth the connection, seeing you kind of recede? Or did he just let you soak in your frustration and just continue to roll 6s on your face?
Oh yeah, he was a real good guy, but he bought me a beer, and we talked a little bit afterwards. But yeah, I mean, I just wasn't that good of a player at that point, so I deployed terribly, and he took advantage of it, and that was all she wrote.
Yeah, man, that's it's hard, especially when you're new and you're I'd say when you're new and you're say above average at the time, and you go 2-0, right? And especially at your first RTTs, you go 2-0 and you're going to that third round, and that last guy or lady or person or whoever is probably somebody who routinely goes 3-0. And so it's I beat a random person round one. I beat someone who's pretty good round 2. I'm feeling pretty good about myself. And you go in kind of feeling yeah, I got this. And then somebody who just knows the game and the function, just back and forth, just continues to educate you on the spear point of his con. It's pretty rough.
Yep.
That happened to me. It wasn't a tournament, but when I first got back into 40K and in 8th edition, I painted up a Castellan with my now 10-year-old, as well as some Space Wolves from an old army. And I brought them in, and I was like, hey, I want to get into tournament play. And this guy was like, okay, well, I can play. Do you want to play a coaching game or a tournament game? And me, being someone who generally has success at competitive games, I made a very big mistake, and I assumed I was going to be good at this. And I said a tournament game, and he's like, okay, great. And he proceeded to just smash me with original unnerfed Yannari Shining Spear, just monstrousness. Tabled me at the top of 2. And it just made me pick up all my nicely painted models and put them in a box. And I didn't even know how to use stratagems at the time. So I walked away and, went back to the Rocky montage. And I came back to my first RTT after that. And I went 2-1, and same kind of thing with you, as I was kicking butt. My only loss was I went up against a really good player locally, amazing dude named John Kohatsu, who happened to be playing Space Wolves and a Castellan too. And he proceeded to give me the master class in the army I thought I knew how to play, and just trashed me. And it was great. But I think that's an important experience on the road to play improvement, is thinking you're a big fish and then just getting full booted in the face by someone who's very polite.
Yeah.
So you said the social aspect is the hardest, and do you feel is the most rewarding part for you the painting? And if so, then what kind of role does the competitive play? Like, what kind of itch does the competitive play scratch for you?
So it used to be the painting was the most important for me, but now as time goes on, and I've put way more resources into trying to get better at the game. The generalship is kind of taken over as the thing I look for the most. But and I'm still obviously putting in all the time necessary to get my army painted up to a good standard. So yeah.
Yeah, it's cool because when you and I started talking, it became evident to both of us that while we have a lot of shared ground in general, like we also approach the best overall thing completely differently, like from two entirely different sides. Because for me, it's not perfectionism or precision at all, right? It's there was a quote, I can't remember the author. My friend who's a writer quoted this at me once, and he said, "There is no audience." Sorry, I had a computer thing be weird. He said there is no audience. And what that's a reference to is that when you're writing a book, you can choose to write for an audience, but very often the people who are writing, creative works are expressing some specific concept. And rather than tailor it to a specific target group to get, notoriety, instead just be true to your creative work. Sorry, is my audio okay? Because it's
yeah.
Okay, cool.
Yeah,
so I kind of that's the way I approach a lot of things with competition. Is in my head there is no opponent, right? Yes, when I go to a competitive play and play against somebody, I am playing against an individual, right? And there's an opponent in the game. But if I lose to my opponent, I'm not upset about it. If I lose to somebody else, I'm not upset about it. And if I never beat that person, I'm still not upset about it. Or it's all for me is competition with myself. The only opponent is me, right? And the goal for that, the reason is like being an ADHD kid, growing up, I had this feeling that I was just not good at anything. Constantly felt like I messed things up because of my attention span and my dyslexia and all these things. And it took me a long time to basically get anything. In my middle school years, I found nerdy games. And it turned out that ADHD, hyperprocessing, very distractible me was actually really good at nerdy games. But there were people who were just way more precise than me, and they were always just going to kick my butt. So for me, it was always competition with myself of just, rather than measuring, did I beat a person, I always measure, am I improving and am I learning? And as I adopted that, it came to a point where I started beating those people who I wasn't beating and those kind of things. And I find that because of that opinion, and I don't attach any ego to my performance in comparison to anyone else. And as long as I feel like I'm just putting in the top level effort and learning, there's no kind of, negative impact on my personal self-worth, because I don't think you should attach personal self-worth to anything that involves randomness. And because of that, when I go to a best overall event, or go to a Warhammer event, I will bring the army I want to bring with the understanding that my only target is X and 1, right? I could go less than that. It might happen. But because of that, it frees me to bring whatever army I want, because I don't care if I lose. I just only really want to lose once, right? Okay. And then as far as the hobby goes, I just want to tell a story. And if I feel like I have accurately told that story in a sense of completeness, then I feel like I've achieved my goal. And if that doesn't necessarily rank as well as someone else who's a more skilled painter than me, that's fine, because they've put in more hours than I have. But I want to know that the thing that I tried to convey came across, right? And so for me, it's really just improvement and understanding if I achieve my own personal goals. And the best overall trophy is kind of like you said, it's the kind of the ultimate recognition of that, right? So like, if I was a really great person supporting my community and making people feel comfortable at the table, and I played as tightly as I possibly could, even if maybe my army has some bad matchups. For instance, I'm playing knights right now. And I painted my army to the point where when you look at it, you get the feel that I'm trying to convey. Then the likelihood is I probably rank pretty well in best overall. right? And I think for me, I don't care if I get beat a million times and I never get a trophy, as long as I feel like I'm learning and having a worthwhile experience. The only times I've really come away bad is when I play against a jerkbag who is also way better than me at both hobby and competitive play. I get trashed and I just walk away. Not even that I lost, but that I lost to someone who was unpleasant to spend time with, right? Like, and I think that's like that's not that I lost per se. It's that I have 3 children. I have a full-time job. I have a lot of intense things in my life. I own a game store. So anytime I allocate to this, hobby is time where I'm seeking personal enjoyment. So, with this, actually, I created a policy that if I come up to the table and the person's a super big jerk, and I feel like I'm getting frustrated about it, usually it's very hard to get me. I'm nearly unflappable. It's very hard to make me mad. There's only a couple things that will. And in the rare circumstance I do, I just quit. I just say, hey, this is more important than it is. This is more important to you than it is to me. So you got it. I'm going to go have a beer. Catch you later. And that can be my one loss, and that's fine.
What kind of red flags are you looking for in that type of situation?
I mean, the only ones that really get me are when someone is either blatantly cheating and I identify it, right? In that case, we'll call a judge, right? And we'll figure it out. But like if someone's cheating to win, they want it more than I do. I don't care if I win. So if they care that bad, and that's something, maybe that's what they need in their life, right? And then the other thing is blatant disrespect for others, right? Someone being rude or mean to someone else. In that case, if my first option is to beat them so soundly, then maybe I can correct their perspective
on the table.
The first option on the table, yeah, right. For sure. Violence is not the option. But the simple fact is, I just don't want to spend time with someone who's going to be mean or belittling, those kind of things. And also, I could probably get, I'm a big, loud dude. And if, there's ever a question of like, hey, those two people are in conflict, the first eyes are going to go to me if it's me and some smaller person, because I'm the big, loud person, right? So ultimately, if it's aggression or whatever, I just walk away because it's not that important. That being said, I've only ever had to do that once, and the person got disqualified. So I don't.
Wow.
Not for me. That was the next round. They actually got in a fight or something. It was weird, but for the most part, I think the community has just been so amazing that it's something I just genuinely look forward to. And if I get told the person I'm going to play against next is like an unpleasant opponent, I make my specific goal to have the best possible game with them. And so far, I've got a pretty good track record for it. So I would say, though, that's the part that's the most effort, is when someone is very obviously unpleasant. Trying to coax them into a state of pleasantness so that we can both have an enjoyable game can sometimes be a little frustrating, that I feel like it becomes my responsibility.
Awesome. You do certainly seem to remember the bad opponents more than the good ones, unfortunately.
I mean, that's the thing, right? And I think the bad opponents are much less common in the world, right? And a lot of the community is relatively small, really. So you find out. And also, I've talked about this before, the internet is just full of people who are staring at their computers waiting for someone to mess up, right?
Yep.
And the moment you do something even slightly off base, everyone's going to talk about it on the internet. I'm not going to say names, but there are some people who wear body cams to tournaments. And my opinion is, if you feel the need to wear a body camera to a tournament, if that's the situation you should at least re-examine why. I'm not going to, talk bad on anybody, but if you're in situations that are so conflicted all the time that you feel like you have to wear a body camera to validate your existence, I feel like you should reevaluate what is going on. But that being said, that's in the gross minority, right?
Absolutely.
Though my friend JT, who's on our team, is a magnet for them. He if there are very well-known bad opponents, he will play all of them at an event.
Ooh.
Yeah, every time. Okay, so the next question I guess we talk about is, so best overall, you say, you're pursuing best overall. How are you approaching doing that now, right? what are the steps you're taking to? Are you flying to events? Are you traveling? Like, what events are you targeting? And like, what events in your area do best overall?
Yeah, so I live in Michigan in the Upper Peninsula, which is an extremely remote area. So like my nearest game store is like a 2-hour drive away from me. So usually I'm trying to go to the Michigan GT, and I'll be going to Motor City Mayhem at the end of this month on Memorial Day down in the Detroit area. So they definitely do those types of awards. And I've been to Adepticon a few times as well, because that's also about a 6-7 hour drive for me. But
it's like the hobby mecca, though, right? Like,
right, yeah. Competition is a little tough at Adepticon.
Oh yeah, no doubt.
Once I saw there were people flying in from other countries to do the painting competitions, I was like, well, I'm probably a little bit out of my league here, so I'll just have
that's the only way to get better.
Yeah.
I'm really lucky to be in the Northwest because we have Canada above me, and they do very hobby-centric, best overall, and a really good competitive scene, as well as Washington itself has a great scene. And then Portland, there's like 3 or 4 of probably some of the best players in the country in Portland. And I think like we get a really strong mix of both really great hobbyists and really strong competitive players. If you're in this like I-5 belt from Canada down to California, and specifically in the Washington circuit, we have a bunch of major events. So you could like never leave Washington and hit GTs and enough GTs and majors to max out your scores, to at least get all your event scores in. Obviously, if you go to LVO, you're going to get a potentially higher score, but we have many majors and GTs, and almost all of them have kind of best overall tracks as well as paint and performance. And the competition is pretty tough. My team specifically has a bunch of the people who are routinely ranked on that, because that's kind of something we focus on my team. Team Aegis, who are like really about community and hobby first. Competitive play is very important, but for us, that's the least important of the 3. But it is still, all 3 are very important. But for us, the primary is investment in community and the kind of expression in the hobby and the art. And then we try to up-level our competitive side. And so the presence of really great competitive players, like the best in tabletop folks, the TNG guys, the Canadian scary people, like, McDougal is just over the border, like the Lichter waiting in the distance. And then we also have some really great hobbyists, right? You've got Rick Hill down south, who's like just like amazing chaos fanatic painter who like hand draws all his skulls, and his armies are already like nice works of art. And so the the competition is real tough, which I really enjoy. And I think that's like been a really big blessing for me. Yeah, I mean, the way I approach it so far has been like I pick an army that and a set of techniques I want to learn. I paint an entire, very large number of models and points, specifically trying to learn that technique and meet a specific theme with that army. And it's something usually that I'm interested in playing. And then I make a commitment to play it for a period of time. And I try to play things that are a little bit off base, that are tailored towards the meta rather than playing whatever the best thing is. Right? I try to play some like weird interactions or kind of strange approaches or counter meta stuff, because that's funner for me. And when I do that, I make the kind of exception that like I'm not going to win every game because I'm doing some weird stuff, and that's cool. And I really try to focus on completeness on my armies. So I'm not as good of a painter as you mechanically.
Thank you.
But I mean, you're really good. You're super clean. I love it. But something I try for is that every single part of my model and every model of my army is done to essentially the same standard with the same, just about the same level of detail. So like if I'm going to do muzzle burn, I do muzzle burn on like all my guns, right? If I'm going to do OSL, I do OSL on like everything's got a little bit of it, right? I do my bases. I do all my bases to like a mid-level kind of display base style, right? And by doing that, you get a really good sense of completeness across the entire army, which I've noticed has helped me a lot with hobby track and overall like people looking at it and being impressed with it, not because maybe it's as executed as well, is because all of the things go together to make the army feel, kind of alive and also done. And it gives a sense of like, there's nothing drawing your eye that says, oh, well, he didn't do that yet, or he could improve there. Even if I could execute it better, the step is probably still completed.
Awesome.
So have you gone to any events recently?
Yeah. I just went to a little RTT in Marquette, Michigan.
Cool.
Yep. And I did get first place.
Sweet.
Yeah.
What were your games like?
So I brought Hail of Doom. I am a dirty elf player. So of all three varieties. And I painted this army. Basically, I started when the Codex came out last year, the Eldar Codex. I had a previous Eldar army that was not really up to my standard anymore, so I just sold that as is, and then just bought new models and basically started the whole army from scratch.
All right.
Yeah.
That's some commitment.
Yeah. So, you want me to talk about my list a little bit, or?
Yeah,
okay.
Sure. When you want, I think you have some pictures for us too.
I do. Let's see here.
Hey,
okay.
Yeah, that's beautiful, man.
Yeah, thank you. So Hail of Doom. I've got. Let's see here. This is my awesome Farseer. With Kurnos's bow and the Mark VIII Parable Hunter. It's a little throwback to Warhammer Fantasy. One of my favorite units from back then was the Sisters of Twilight for the Wood Elves.
Okay.
The two girls on the Forest Dragon. Yep. And then I got a little custom Baharath. Not a fan of the current model, so I just made one kind of out of the arc. Yep. Let's see. I got some Dire Avengers that I kit bashed with the new Guardians kit. So basically, when I made these Dire Avengers, I had to buy a box of Guardians and a box, two boxes of Dire Avengers for the helmets and their guns. So
money, the bane of every kit basher.
Yeah. So they are scaled. Kind of to the new standard. The new Eldar models are quite a bit taller than the old ones. I mean, that's kind of the case with a lot of the new kits that come out, like the new orcs. Just the boys are, about a head taller than the old ones, which is a little unfortunate. But anyway, so those Dire Avengers, I've got 20 of those. I've got a unit of 5 Rangers. I've got 2 Farseers. This is my other Farseer with the Sunstorm Relic. He has Guide and Will of Surian. The other one has Doom and Executioner.
Cool.
Yeah. And then I've got 4 Warlocks.
Yes.
Yeah.
Nothing like bike wizards.
Yep. 5 Rangers. Oh, let's see. Go back here.
That was a trophy. I do not believe
that. I'm going to talk about a trophy a little bit.
I do not believe that's in the list.
Yeah. 2 Night Spinners.
Cool.
I had 6 Shroud Runners, and after playing a few practice games with them, I know everybody is super hype on the Shroud Runners currently. I just felt like they weren't really getting a whole lot done, and they were just giving up because a lot of people tend to grind them down against Eldar for whatever reason. So I'm just like feeding them kind of throwaway units.
Sure.
I kind of went all in on the indirect here. So 2 Night Spinners, 3 D cannons, and then 2 Wave Serpents. Oh, sweet. And the backbone of the list is the 9 Wind Riders with Shuriken.
Yeah, of course.
Yeah. And this awesome trophy. I didn't even know we were getting a trophy. Apparently, like the GW reps regionally will just give these out to the stores. So, man, they handed me this glass trophy. I thought, wow, this is the coolest thing I've ever got.
Let's go.
Yeah.
All right. So you learned some lessons. Obviously, 10th is coming. Do you have any more events on the horizon for 9th?
Just Motor City at the end of the month. I'll pretty much be bringing the same list. I do have to get a display board done in the meantime.
Yeah, for sure. Very important, especially at the bigger events.
Yeah.
All right, cool. Well, so I went to an event recently too. I went to a large GT called Tau Tipping that we have in the Northwest, run by a wonderful person named Jason Bird. It's a fantastic store at Lion Guard Gaming, and there were like 59, 60 people there. Some really amazing players were there. I got to play some super cool games. I've got some pictures too. Boom.
Awesome.
So I brought my knights. I did finish, like you, I finished my display board. But
nice.
So I brought my knights. I've got my knights walking out of this big like fortress gate, and I've got this destroyed knight, which I cannibalized like $300 worth of kits to make, which both makes me weep and also really excited because it was super fun and I got to sculpt lava and stuff. And
is that like spots where they've been hit by like Melta and it's just
yeah. I don't have a better picture of it right now, but yeah, literally like there's on the front, like it's all slagged out and like his sword is melting and stuff. It's pretty cool.
Awesome.
It was really fun to do. When I want to learn a new technique, I just set out to do it repetitively. I was doing a couple like entries and some things as well as like some models for some games. And I just decided, hey, I'm going to do lava. Like I'm just going to do heat lava stuff over and over again. And it was pretty fun.
So that's
I've got my knights
down there.
Yeah, all free.
My man.
And sculpting. Yeah, it's hard. I got my knights. This is House Raven. They're super fast. It's a kind of the idea is the army can play either really aggressive or just play on my side of the board. There's like this guy who I can make go super fast. I won't get into stats, but he can go really, really fast, really, really far, or he can just hang out and be -1 damage in my deployment zone and just play goalie. And so the army can go between like playing like a stay home and bank points battle plan to like end up in your deployment zone and start shellacking things battle plan. And it's been really fun and flexible to play. And it's nice because I just like accept that when I go play the guard match, it's going to be done in 15 minutes. I'm going to have a beer, so I'm down. And then just about everything else is like an actual game, which is great.
Okay.
I had a lot of fun also doing like this like illuminated text style like plaque and banners in the corner.
Yeah, that looks awesome.
It was super fun. I did take best overall. I got #1 on Hobby Track, and I went X1. I lost to a really great dude who won the event. He was playing Melta Spam Salamanders into my knights on top table.
Oh, awesome.
So it's like best scenario for him, worst scenario for me. But he's also like totally a Salamanders Firstborn purist, and so he deserves it. It was super great.
I've heard of this guy.
Yeah, Harry.
Only. All right.
And this is my round 2 that was against Voton.
Well, what
was a really tight game.
Do you have in your army right?
The knights in my army right now are I have an errant to make people go fast, advance, and charge. I have a paladin. The errant's a princeps, so he can make the paladin advance and charge. The paladin is set up that basically he gets added to a movement and he gets minimum dice on his advanced dice and minimum dice on his charge dice. So he auto charges anything within 23 inches without rolling dice. Right. So he's super fast and he can shoot all of his guns after advancing. So he's just like a pure threat. The rest of the army can shoot all of their guns after advancing as well. I've got 3 Helvrins for the long range Daka. I have 3 Warglaves for the Choppy and the Melta. And then I've got a double claw, double rad flamer Moriax because against for overwatches and specifically against demon charges out of Deep Strike, he's amazing. And then
is this the guy with the rad cleanser?
Yeah, he's got double rad cleansers, right? So they're 2d6 flamers that are AP 0, wound on a 2+ against non-vehicle Titanic models, and do flat 3 damage. Right, so it's pretty crazy. And then I can do the thing to convert it to mortals on wound rolls of 6. And then I have the MVPs there's a Jokero weaponsmith and a single model acolyte. One is my agency Imperium in my detachment, and one is the auxiliary. And the Jokero weaponsmith is a 20-point character who's 3 wounds with a 5-up invul. He's got like a jazz hands laser, and he's also got like a point and shoot like bigger laser. And that dude during my event killed a fiend, 2 Thunderkin, Be'lakor, and 6 Daemonettes. So
probably dating myself here a little bit, but wasn't there a list a long time ago with just nothing but Joe Caros?
There was a lot. There was like a Grey Knights thing, yeah, for sure.
Okay.
This is one of my favorite opponents, and a dude who's in our local meta, Tanner. Tanner was playing Slaanesh Demons with Belcor. Super great game. Super great dude. Wore like an American hat and a beer apron, and we drank beer all around and had a great time, and it was super fun. And then that's my team. We're all out to Mexican food. And then that was us at the end. Donald he won the best hobby because I got the best overall, and I took best overall. And then our baby boy, Nick, took best opponent. So it was overall like a strong victory for Team Aegis, and it was a really great weekend.
Awesome. What did we get at the Mexican restaurant?
Oh, I got, I'm going to mispronounce it, but it's like Camarones Los Diablos. The spicy shrimp.
My man.
My man. The spicy shrimp. I'm all about the spicy shrimp.
Same here.
Yeah. So we've talked a little bit about like what best overall is, and we've talked about, how we approach it. So I want us to talk real quick about why it's really important and what this show is going to look like going forward.
Sure.
So why it's important. I think best overall is important because at the end of the day, this is a hobby that has a lot of potential to draw people in for a lot of different reasons. I think incentivizing and focusing on something that rewards kind of the exemplar of all of those parts of our hobby is something that will be overall good for the vitality and the long-term, the good environment of our hobby. Because you can have highly competitive, successful games that also have toxic environments. And you can have, I think you can have a really competitive, cool game that also has a really good community environment to be part of. And I do think emphasizing good sportsmanship and hobby and that time and effort into the art side is really important. I think it's one of those things that just up levels everybody, but it also helps acknowledge people who are spending time and effort and dedicating their time to the community and the hobby who aren't maybe going to be, if John Lennon shows up at a tournament, you're probably not beating John Lennon. Right. You might, maybe everyone can lose games. But if John Lennon shows up at a tournament, it is more likely he's going to win, or, one of those artwork guys who literally does this for a living than, one of us weekend warriors who is just trying to improve and kind of hitting all these things. Right. And I think part of engagement is keeping everyone else engaged. And if the only target is, did you win all your games or not? I think that kind of falls a little flat for overall community engagement. And considering there's such a large part of this hobby or this brand is story, and that cinematic experience on the table where you both have really cool looking armies and they're clashing and there's these cinematic moments, that's what I live for. I love when I'm really focused on a game, I get first person style and I'm just in it. And the cinematic kind of this big knight smashing over a wall and these heroes charging in. I mean, that's what we live for, right? And considering the game also has a large amount of randomness, there's those, you all know the story of the sergeant who with the power fist who beats the bloodthirster, right? Someone rolls all ones, the other person rolls all sixes, whatever. And those crazy moments make the game great, but also it means that no matter how good you are at this game, and I know that there's a whole theories about if you're good enough at this game, you offset dice. I agree with that. But in general, there's always still a chance for these upsets. So I think having there be something that acknowledges and keeps the community driving towards this overall high standard of excellent sportsmanship, excellent appearance, and tight competitive play, I think is very healthy. And I think it's something that we should talk more about. And I also think it will help also draw attention to hobby, which I think the art and hobby part has taken actually a backseat to competitive play significantly in the last several years. It's starting to elevate back up, but I'd really like to see hobby and the art piece elevated to the same level as the competitive component. Do you want to add anything to that, Joe?
Yeah, I mean, I haven't been in the scene as much as you have over the past couple of years. So, especially, with COVID and everything. So, but yeah, I mean, I always, if I see that a big event is going to have, best overall, best painted, those types of words, or even just sometimes, a major will break it down to do best faction awards, like
Sure.
Best Eldar, Best Space Marines, Imperium. So, those are things I always try to go for. If I see that there's an event nearby that's going to have those. And when I say nearby, I mean like 9 to 10 hours away. So,
So that being said, understand that we think this is important and there's not really a lot of people talking about it. I think that's a really good reason to do the show. That being said, is just us talking about us trying to get best overalls is not an interesting show. This was our introduction. So going forward, what we're going to do is we're going to rotate through the focus of shows. We'll probably touch on kind of all components and every show a little bit, but each episode is going to focus a little more centric on one of the three main areas of our hobby, right? Whether it's the art side, whether it's community, or competitive play. And we're going to strive to also have some guests who are either well known in those areas or have a lot of experience and knowledge in those areas to be on and talk. And we'll have some kind of focused subject matter about each of those things, with the intent also of like every show being something that can be productive and hopefully help other people maybe meet some of their specific hobby goals or improve in competitive play and those kind of things. It's never going to be, a coaching show. This isn't going to be the highest level, like, hey, this is how you win every game. But the goal is really to like explore every part of kind of our beloved hobby and give all of it kind of an equal shake and try to bring some of the things of each part that maybe are like not currently getting the attention they need to light. For instance, I want to have Jacob Thayer from Hobby Goblins, who I hope is watching, on some time to talk about the art side, because he really is just trying to like push this elevation of not using the word hobby, but using the word art to describe like the time and effort things that we're doing. I'd like to get some of the super competitive people on here too. There's a lot of hobbyists that run through my mind that I want to get on here, but and then also there's some really amazing both community leaders and just people who are just like really great to spend time with, who are part of the community. One point we'll probably drag Colin on because I like Colin and he also does a lot for our community. But that's the goal. I think the next show is going to be more centric on hobby.
okay.
And then, but we'll let you know if that changes. And I believe we're going to be kind of same bat time, same bat channel next, or not next, but not next Thursday, but the Thursday after. You'll see our beautiful faces if you're on YouTube and hear our sultry tones. And we'll talk to you about how we got our butts kicked at our last event, and it makes it okay because at least our models are pretty.
Yeah, absolutely.
All right. Well, Joe, do you have like, if you had a goal for this show, like if you had something that this show would like result in, what would it be? And I'm putting you on the spot, but that's intentional.
Well, just a personal goal, because obviously I don't have as many accolades as you have, but I would certainly like to win best overall at a major at some point in my life. So
all right. So we're following Joe's Rocky style montage.
yes,
on his direction to best overall. Yes. We definitely are going to need. We're going to need you in like a gray sweatsuit at some point. If you get the best overall, you need to do the.
Yes.
This also feels like we needed like an intro screen with like you and me doing the fists like Rocky and Apollo.
Drago and
oh yeah, that's it.
Yeah.
Yeah, man. So do you feel like doing the show, like you feel like talking and thinking about the approach of best overall is going to help you like be better at going for best overall?
Oh, absolutely. And if we're going to be having guests on, that's going to be huge help. Not just to me, the audience.
Sure.
As well, so.
It's okay to have a selfish interest. That's fine.
I'm really excited.
Yeah. For me, if I could do anything, if anything could come with the show, it would be that I stopped winning best overalls. And what I mean by that is I want people to come and kick my butt in both our local scene and other places. And if the best overall kind of targeting the strong community participation, the amazing hobby, competitive gameplay got to the level where like best overall was such a very tight competition, every time, I think that would make me happy, especially, and even if that means I don't ever win another one, because I don't really care about that as much. Man, you just went super aggressive, Dark.
Yeah. My screen's
think,
just turned off for some reason.
I think
that's really weird.
That would be my ideal outcome, right? Is to elevate the overall focus on the other two areas of the hobby, to the point where the competition is just so tight that the only way you're going to win the best overall is by being a freaking superhero, and that kind of encouragement to, push farther, go harder, I think. And I think, since part of it is being a good opponent, just the idea of people being very conscious of how they're making the environment for their opponent when they play, and being good stewards of the space they're sharing with those people. I think nerds in general, not to whatever, I've noticed there's a lot of people in the nerdy competitive communities, Magic, Warhammer, whatever, who are less self-aware of the space they share with others. And I think this is a reason why sometimes there are, demographics and stuff that gravitate away from certain games or formats. And I think if everyone was just maybe a little more self-aware and a little more taking responsibility for protecting the space that everyone is sharing, as far as making it a comfortable environment for the entirety of the game, I think we'd be in a better spot. And I think the same goes for focus on hobby, etc.
Absolutely.
All right.
Do you have anything on the horizon coming up?
I do. My last 9th edition event is going to be a hobby event. Or not hobby event, sorry, a team event. My brain just meant it. A team event. I'm going to play my Knights again. It'll be my last hurrah 9th. It'll be the Brood Wars picking order done by Chase in Olympia, Washington. Okay. Currently, there's 15 teams signed up there. If you got a team, bring it out. They're very hobby-centric as well. Some pretty stiff competition, both for hobby and for play. I know Rose City Ruffians, who's mostly the TNG guys, are going to bring a team that is probably worthy of a marquee world level tournament with Nicholas Olsen Johnson, Lucas, Tyler Bortel, Tanner, and I don't remember or know who their 5th is, but so there's going to be both some really crazy competitive pressure as well as some hobby pressure. Team Aegis is going to bring the hobby pressure for sure. We won the Las Vegas team hobby component last year, and we had a pretty awesome setup, and there was some really stiff competition. So I'm really looking forward to that. If I can pull 100 and something points from competitive play and from hobby, I can lock in best Knights and best Knights hobby. So I'm excited about that. And also currently Team Aegis is number 1 in hobby track right now. Obviously we're only halfway through the season, but we've got the hobby goblins very tight on our heels. So no time to rest. And then go ahead.
I was going to say, to your knowledge, has anyone gotten best over or a best in faction for competitive play and that faction for hobby as well?
People have all the time. Yeah, a lot of people do it. It's a lot of purist stuff. You get it.
Okay.
Usually a lot of the same people are getting best for a faction are also getting best hobby, because there's a lot of people who just play that hobby in and out, and also are passionate about their models in that specific faction. And then I've got in July, my June is pretty light other than that event. And my July is going to be the Lone Star Open, which I'm going because the Marine Corps is defending our title. We won the Military Cup last year because also is the military championship for FLG. So the Marine Corps has got to defend our cup this year. Nice. And then I also have the Tacoma, Seattle Open as well. Yeah, Colby just called out that Nicholas Olsen Johnson, as we call him, Naj. I giggle every time I say it. But Naj won best hobby, best faction for Voton, and there was I think not last year, the year before. I think I got it for Grey Knights.
All right.
At least it got. I think so. Here we've had a couple, and I know that this year Lee on my team is pursuing it for Custodes. So yeah, I think it's something you do. Just if you're the person, if you're grinding out one specific faction all the time and you're constantly hobbying on that faction to get to a higher level, I think it's kind of a matter of time, because a lot of people do shift, especially some of the better players shift to different factions right as they become broken or whatever. Yeah, well, this was super cool. I really enjoyed this.
Yeah.
And we'll be back in 2 weeks to talk about some hobby-centric stuff. We'll try to get it into the notes, our exact agenda for next time ahead of time. But we're going to talk about some hobby stuff. Specifically, I think we're going to center around kind of how to set goals, select an army, and do an army project, specifically with the consideration of building something that is both competitive and cool and awesome to play, and getting that completeness of your hobby project. Absolutely. So, all right. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
And, if you need anything, spare no mercy in the comments.
Oh, we do have a question.
If squad markings or unit identifiers are on the hobby track, someone squad marking, say Tyranids, what do you do? Oh, yeah, this is a super good question. Do you have an answer for this, Joe? I have an answer. Do you have an answer?
Yeah, my answer is I don't do squad marking, so I want everything to look the same, or have a uniform look to it throughout the army. So I will just be very careful where I place my models and clearly dictate to my opponent which models are in which squads, or put dice down in between them to show that there's a division here.
Well, that doesn't help with hobby track. So the answer I will give for this for hobby track is that, so for instance, knights, right? Because since knights are, again, something where like you don't really use squad markings. There's a bunch of different like types of markings that could be in place, but not specifically squad markings. So for knights, I actually printed out a legend that's in that like kind of in that picture I had, that like illuminated manuscript kind of thing that had like the aged paper with the knight on it. And I actually printed out a legend that had what the different colors on the knights meant. So on my knights, House Colville, their base color is brown. That's the house color. And if you're good at shooting, you get shooting honors. That's blue panels. The more blue panels, the better marksman you are. If you are, if you get combat honors, so you're in melee, you get yellow panels. More yellow panels, better combatant you are, the more melee honors you have. If you have trophy kills, so you've killed monstrous titanic creatures in close combat, you get red on your weapon. The more kills, the more red markings. So by having that legend that explains the markings, it kind of fills that same kind of thing. And while it's a color, and I also have some transfers of markings and stuff on there, it kind of meets the same expectation. For Tyranids, what I've seen done is a couple things. One is having colored, like how different types of creatures evolve different colors for different reasons. So for instance, having colors that specifically specify, like if these are my guys with toxin sacks, or if these are my, here's some specific lore about these guys and why they have this color, having some color components that tie into it, or having some specific chitin kind of patterns or things like that, or even having some like pieces or some components that denote they are all part of the same squad, I think meets that, right? Like, so for Nick V on our team, he has some Tyranids. They're all really black and dark, but they have different mutations that show that they're in the same squads, like little dangly lures or specific like gill things or fins. And they all have the same ones in the same squad. So you can tell what squad they are by their actual like genetic formation rather than just their markings. Does that help, Bob? If it didn't help, Bob, let me know, and leave a comment, and I'll try to get more info to you. But it's just kind of like thinking outside the box as far as the way you approach it. But I think that makes total sense for Tyranids, right? I don't want to see anybody putting like 1, 2, 3 on a Tyranid. Sweet. Last call for questions before we shut out the lights. Well, thank you so much for spending some time with us. Hopefully this was engaging and interesting and enriching for you. And then we hope to talk to you soon. Catch you later.
Thank you, everyone. Have a good night.